Brilliant. So, welcome to our February monthly momentum meeting. We have with us tonight live, we've got Cassandra, we've got Donald, Mary Lynn, Robin and myself, Lena. And thank you for listening and coming along tonight to our meeting, and also thank you to everyone that's listening to it the next day. So can everyone see my screen that's listening in live at the moment?
Yes.
Brilliant. Tell me if I'm going too fast through the screens, because I know there's a little bit of a delay between me clicking mouse here and you seeing the new screen where you are. Brilliant. So, as you know, the February meeting is talking about preconception, and we've also got some other business questions that we've got from our educators, one in particular from Susan that she had. So if you have a little look at your screen at the moment, we've got the February format up here. And we're going to start with the business question from Susan. So Susan is one of our new educators that's recently qualified. And Susan was very keen to know what everyone thought about, well, pretty much how to get the ball rolling on recruiting clients when you're a new educator. So I was going to start the ball rolling with that one. Or Mary Lynn, what do you have to say?
Can you just say that again, Lena? I didn't quite get all that you said.
No problem.
What is Susan's query?
Okay. So Susan's question was, as a new educator, what ideas did everyone have on how to get the ball rolling and recruit some clients? And she particularly wanted ideas that were nice and easy and didn't involve too much cost.
Okay.
Donald, could you open us up on a bit of a response for you?
Cool. So thank you, Lena. The first thing that comes to my mind, has she got any clients at the moment? What is the level of her work at the moment?
I understand that Susan is pretty much a blank canvas at the moment. She doesn't have any particular client base to work off of. That's my understanding. I'm not sure.
Cool. Next question. Does she? Where is she? Where is she based?
Auckland?
North Shore.
So she lives in Northland.
No, North Shore, Auckland.
Oh, North Shore. Okay, so it's good. Cool. Tell me a little bit about Susan. What would you consider her strengths to be? Yeah, that'll do. Into relationships. What are her strengths?
Can you add something there, Robin?
Yeah, it'd be great if Sue was here. I don't want to speak for her, but she professionally, she's a trained midwife and she's also a trained fertility nurse. So she's a senior nurse working at a fertility unit in town. So in terms of finding clients, I think there are some relationship building. There's some relationship building to be done in the more sort of medical field of fertility, and maybe at some point in the future that will be a great resource for her. But right now, she's probably looking more into the community without actually going through work to find clients.
Okay, because that's good thinking.
Can everyone see Cassandra's response there in the meeting? Cassandra also wanted to add to Robin's analogy there. She said, very good at teaching, great interpersonal skills, and very aware of her strengths and weaknesses.
Great, thanks Cassandra, that's really helpful because, you know, this is unique to each and every one of us. You know, I don't know whether you know it, but I'm a Strengths Finder coach certified by Gallup, and this is a framework for helping people understand how to go about things like this. And, you know, I'd love to offer that to educators. I mean, it costs us $15 for the royalties, and that's all I would charge to do it and then have a conversation, because we all have different styles. And, you know, but I think if we just presume then that she is able to to connect, and she has the confidence to just go and ask people things, she's got to start with her friends really close to home. You know, who are the people, and they're the really obvious people. So she's asking not just for support and referrals, but she's not just asking for referrals, she's also asking for support and to build her confidence and her belief. And just ask people, maybe not to refer people, but just to talk about it. So she has to explain to them what she's about and what drives her, and she, you know, ideally with some passion. I think that to be clear on what that message is, like it's the old story. If you've got 30 seconds in a lift, what do you say? And so that's where sitting down and writing a little brochure about, you know, what is the benefits of my service helps people get really clear, even if you never print the brochure. And I think those are the two things. Now, and as soon as you get a client, the key is at the end of the session to be asking them for help too, and asking them who else would enjoy this conversation. They would be my first three sort of suggestions. It's about, first of all, getting clear on the question you'd ask.
I think that's fantastic, Donald. That's great advice, and I love the whole business plan sort of mentality, even if you don't end up sharing it or doing it formally. I think in addition to your comments, because Sue is very personable and professional, and she is a nurse, that perhaps in the area that she wishes to practice in, and that may be at home or it may be nearer to work, that she actually targets some of the larger GP practices and takes in a little bit of information, offering to give CME to nurses and doctors, if she's willing, and as long as she can get sort of a minimum of 6 together, which is generally fairly easy in a larger practice, then she could go in one evening or on a lunchtime and present the information. And if she needs support with that for the first 1 or 2, then another Auckland educator, myself, I'll volunteer as well, could actually, you know, go ahead and help her with that until she's confident in rolling that out. And then I think she'll find that referrals will come from those GP practices. A second option is something that's a little bit more commercial. It still doesn't involve any financial layout, and that is something that I did when I first was qualified. I contacted a local paper, and they came round and took some photos and you know, actually wrote a little article about something new in the community. And also I went to one of those daily do grab one Groupon type things and put a proposal to them. And even though you don't make a huge amount of money by offering something like a preconception appointment, they market it, they take about half of what they advertise it for, so say they advertise it for $50, that people have, you know, a day or 5 days to get this deal, and then they book with you directly and say that $50, you buy $5 of it, so it's next to net. But when I did that, I only got about maybe 20, 25 people respond to the ad. However, most of them showed up, minus a couple, and out of that, something like 70 to 80% went on to book the 3 appointments for trying to conceive. So that was really useful. And then, of course, it's word of mouth comes from that once people have gone through your service.
That sounds
Just
like a really good
ideas.
idea. Cassandra also wanted to just note and reference what Donald said earlier, that she's been through the Gallup process and she thinks that's particularly invaluable experience and helps you focus on your strengths.
Yeah. If she's very personable and friendly, she, you know, needs to talk to those people close to her to begin with, like Donald said, and get some referrals that way to begin with. And that's a great idea, Robin.
It worked well for me.
Fabulous, absolutely. So yeah, if she's got the confidence to just go, if she's a professional nurse or medico right now, she should be just talking to doctors, and it'll take several sort of points of contact, but she's got to start straight away.
And if you just wrap it, oh, sorry. So I can just wrap up that question now and also just add something in for anyone else that might be thinking the same thing and might not have the sort of the base of being a fertility nurse and that kind of experience, might be freaking out about going and talking to GPs and that sort of thing. Can I also just suggest on the educator part of the website under the education grants, so that helps you to go into the community and helps cover your costs to go and do some education sessions and talk about natural fertility and your service to the community. There's actually a list on the website that actually lists a whole lot of organisations like Plunkett and Parents Group and Home Birth and all sorts of things like that. So I personally found, just to build my confidence, some of those smaller groups were a really fantastic way to just get the ball rolling. And it's amazing what kind of conversation that generates. And you only need to do a couple, and then suddenly Susie's talking to Holly, and Holly's a physio or someone, you know, and it just suddenly takes off from there. So that can be quite helpful too. Oh, and as Cassandra points out, there's also all those ideas in the training manual under the education section, whereas that's where the website got the ideas from, Cassandra, so thank you for that. Anyone have any last things to add on that before we move on to the next topic?
Just to emphasise really that there are educators of New Zealand who are very, very open to assist us, you know, either just to women's fitness club or Plunkett or, you know, La Leche or whatever it is that you want to do. There's educators who are very happy to go along with.
Yep. You've cut out, Robin.
Oh, we've just lost the last bit of Robin's sentence. Well, I hope that's what the ideas back for back to Susan on that question. I'm sure that's got everyone thinking about lots of different things too. So next on our list tonight, going back to sort of the preconception theme for tonight's meeting, was just thinking about what sort of role educators have in the preconception advice that we give to our clients. And just to start the ball rolling, we've obviously already got, in our education sessions, we've got the little cue cards that we use. So on those, as an example of preconception ideas, we have one card with tips for men wishing to conceive and one card with tips for women wishing to conceive. And we also have a card which talks about what is infertility, and some, I think that also has some links on it for people to groups that might be useful for them as well. Anyone want to?
I didn't hear all the words of your last sentence I didn't hear. Lena?
Oh, sorry, Mary Lynn, talking too fast.
No. We're just cutting out.
Right. So I was just referring to the cards, the cue cards that we currently have that we use during our appointments for clients.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So we have the tips for men wishing to conceive, tips for women wishing to conceive, and we also have a card on infertility. Does anyone else have some thoughts on what else as an educator we do as part of the preconception advice for our clients? Mary Lynn, I'm sure you'd have something to add there.
It's just such a huge area. I've just been thinking about it since the last few days, and it depends entirely on the client, couple, or just the client person that you see, and you have to work it out when you first meet them. If they're under a great deal of stress at the time, you can't push everything at them. You know, when you look at all the information that's around and, you know, tick all these 20 boxes to give me some information, you've just got to get to know them a little bit, and you know, it might be that just you just get them charting to begin with, and then you gradually, the next visit, give them a whole lot more information. You know, if they're too stressed, you can't just go bowling into everything, you know, the environment and the food, and I mean, there are a few basic things you can just talk about quite easily, but I'm just wary of going into screeds of stuff with them. That's my first thought.
I think that's a really, really good point. I know I've been a bit too enthusiastic sometimes with presenting too much information. It's very easy to overwhelm people in that first session because there's already so much content we cover, and it's a good point that you've raised about them being potentially quite anxious as well, Mary Lynn, which I'll come back to later in the meeting. But it's a perfect example of the couple I was going to talk about in the next couple of slides that were just so anxious and so upset and so emotional that it would have been inappropriate to give them too much preconception advice.
Yeah.
Cassandra would like to add something there. She said, I'd have to agree with you, Mary Lynn, that it is that you have to be relational to the client and where they are at. Does anyone have anything in particular that they do check with people preconception apart from the cards? I'm thinking, I mean, there are a couple of other things we do discuss. I think one of the compulsory things we learned as educators was to check the rubella status, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
What else would you cover, Robin? Are you there, Robin?
I see Robin is on the telephone now. She was offline a moment ago.
Oh, right. She's probably not going to be adding much there.
Oh. You can tell us a lot, Donald.
Oh, Cassandra has something else to add. She said personal lubricants. Discussing personal lubricants. That's actually a really good point. I actually forgot to cover this with a client a while ago, and it was only in an email that I gave them the advice about 2 days after the appointment, and they said, I can't believe you actually said that. No one's ever said that until I recently found on Google you're not supposed to be using KY jelly when you're trying to conceive, and we've been using that for 2 years.
Oh, wow.
That's a bit of a whoops. They were shocked to learn that.
Very important one.
What's that? Sorry, Mary Lynn?
That's a very important one, isn't it?
It's a very important one. Good point, Cassandra. I also, if they are quite relaxed and if they particularly ask about preconception advice, it also sort of depends what your background is. Because I have a background in herbal medicine and nutrition and things like that, I do quite like to check over sort of their diet, but that's above and beyond what we usually do as educators. But that's just sort of a personal preference. I like to just check in with what kind of nutrition they're putting into their body. It's often quite a good place just to generate a bit of conversation about sort of alcohol and smoking and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Mm.
Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Sorry, Lena, I sort of dipped out for a bit there.
Oh, you're back, Robin.
There a little bit, so I've just come back to you're talking. Sorry about my internet.
No problem. We're just talking about preconception advice for our clients, and we've had a wee chat so far. I'm not sure if you heard about making sure we don't overshare too much information, especially if we're at the first appointment and they might be a little bit overwhelmed. And we've talked about the rubella injection and personal lubricants, and I've mentioned that I do quite like to discuss diet because it sort of leads into that conversation about alcohol and smoking and that sort of thing. Is there anything else you like to talk about in terms of preconception advice at your first or second appointment? Or third?
I think that's about the first and second appointment, because although I do give preconception advice at the first appointment normally, and the second if I need to follow, I actually have an appointment if people want to come in for an hour-and-a-half appointment around preconception. It's obviously a lot more than 4 might be appropriate in just meeting someone learning the STM method. But I think my opinion is strongly that you must provide the Ministry of Health guidelines. So that covers smoking, alcohol, rubella check, folic acid, iodine, that sort of thing. I feel that you really must advise. And I think if you don't want to talk about diet because it's of your modality, then the very least you should do is advise them to go on to the Ministry of Health Food and Safety for women wanting to get pregnant, which I think is Food Smart.
That's a very good point, and that's a link we could have on our website, would be to the ministry guidelines. Or as Cassandra says, give them a copy of the pamphlet which is available. And Cassandra would also like to point out that it's not the rubella injection, it's checking rubella immunity, which is a good point.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, and in fact, yeah, Cassandra, maybe we need to actually, or maybe we do already, advise our new students as to how they can get hold of all of those information brochures and leaflets. You're going to tell me it's in the manual, aren't you?
Yes, it is.
We do.
We might have to put a link on the website too, just in case they need to refresh their memory. Because it is quite easy to get those brochures. I think I've done it before, and it's a very easy process, and they just turn up on your doorstep. Right. Brilliant. Any other comments there?
One point I just wanted to make is, you know, when you're going through, perhaps you've got a list in your mind, be careful that you're not going to say something that's absolutely obvious, you know, because you might be on automatic when you're sort of thinking, well, I've got to do this and this and this and this, and then you talk about overweight, and of course the person is huge, or you know, you've just got to be delicate there when you're talking about things. Make sure that it's accurate what you're referring to. Anyway, that's
a very valid point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
I'm sure we've all been caught out by that before, and as Cassandra said, she totally agrees.
Yeah. Well, when you're talking in history as well, I mean, you're looking at things like past STIs, and then what treatment and you know, testing after treatment and all that kind of thing, and you may have sort of little alarm bells ringing in your own head, but you do have to sort of be really sensitive, but at the same time you do need to, you know, start that and keep that in the back of your mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So next we had an example of what Mary Lynn was talking about earlier, and it was an anxious couple. This was a client I saw a week ago, I think it was. And they're quite a young couple. You should be able to see their details. It's a very brief overview of their details. I know there's a few important things missing there. Quite young, hadn't been trying to conceive for, they said 12 months, but the more we talked about it, there was probably a few months in there where there hadn't been much trying happening at all. So it was just on 12 months, sort of looking at the higher side of things. They hadn't had achieved any pregnancy so far. And the GP was just encouraging them really to keep trying at this stage because the hormone tests for the lady had come back fine, and the sperm test results had also come back fine. So when they came to see me, I was almost a little bit surprised because it had been a while since I've seen a couple that were so anxious and so sort of, you know, you get a couple and they're just really, really emotionally charged, and the environment in the room was very fragile. There was a lot of tension. So it was an interesting first appointment, and it was a perfect example of what Mary Lynn's been talking about sort of you didn't want to overwhelm them too much, and you didn't want to push them with too many questions and things like that. You wanted to sort of ease them through the process of the first appointment nice and smoothly. So I thought they were a good example of sort of an interesting preconception couple. I've only seen them for the first appointment, so I don't know I did know her cycle length was 27 to 28 days, is the Cassandra asking, and we didn't know what the luteal length was, and we didn't know what day she was ovulating. However, she had used some LH sticks, which appeared to indicate she was ovulating around day 20, day 19 to day 20. And it was quite an interesting example of preconception advice, because I did go through the diet briefly, and I did ask them the question about smoking and alcohol, and it was quite an interesting, the tension in the room actually sharpened slightly, and it turned out that there was actually some extra medical issues going on with them. The male had recently had, within a month or two, had very, very high alcohol consumption to the point where he actually had a tonic-clonic seizure.
Oh,
So it was quite an interesting history, and they were really shocked when I was telling them that, alcohol actually affects sperm and how long it takes for sperm to actually be created. So I thought might be worth a discussion, and Cassandra points out, so a short-lived teal, and yes, Cassandra, I suspect that was the case. She also had quite significant PMS and tender breasts in the second part of her cycle, so the herbalist side of me was anticipating there was a little bit of a hormone imbalance on her side and some fried sperm on his side. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts on that?
That's a good point, Cassandra.
it'll be interesting to see what happens, huh?
Yes, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. She's very excited about getting karting, and it seems to have gone off with a hiss and a roar. So yes, I'm looking forward to seeing what their first chart will show. And Cassandra has added into the conversation, so there may be some blaming going on from female to male. Yes, Cassandra, there was a lot of stress and tension, and emotions were running very high, so that would be hit the nail on the head there, which I'm sure isn't very helpful for, stress levels and trying to conceive and fertility and things. And Cassandra's also added, thereby creating that stress in the appointment. Yes, exactly. Do you have anything to add to that, Robin?
You just took it gently as it goes, I guess.
Any other preconception advice you would particularly give this couple, or?
I think just it brings up that it says here hormone tests and sperm analysis, etc. So just that, as an educator, we need to remember that, this may be the first time that a couple are able to actually discuss and interpret results accurately, because sometimes they're quite rushed in a clinic environment and they don't really have the on what the test is about or what the results really mean. And so sometimes, not if they're overly stressed, but if the opportunity arises, then sometimes it's good for them to spend a little bit of time looking over those results with you.
That's a really interesting.
Yeah, as Cassandra said.
Yeah.
The results.
I did actually see a copy of the results for his semen analysis so far, and interestingly, his I don't know if it's interesting or not. You might both have something to add to this, but the volume of the sample was under 1, and it's technically supposed to be 1.5 mils or greater. Apart from that, everything else was actually perfectly within bounds. Surprisingly, for his alcohol consumption in his other lifestyle choices, I thought his sperm appeared in a basic test to be quite good. However, it raised a couple of questions. One of my questions I had was, I wonder how relevant the quantity is, because I can imagine there could be lots of things go on to mean that that quantity is lower than it might actually be in reality. And secondly, it raised the question of, just because everything looks good on a local level interpretation, do you think, Robin, that necessarily gives a good indication of sort of the actual quality of the sperm in terms of DNA?
Potentially. We do rely on those semen analysis, and it isn't just about, as you say, the quantity of the sample. It's also about, how they move, what shape they are. So, morphology, there's lots of things that are looked at. So it is generally a good indicator, yes. And as you say, there's reasons why, if you're talking about how much sample actually reached the pot, that it could be a very simple explanation for that. But as long as, what Cassandra said, my first question would be, how is the specimen collected, at home and then transported or done at the clinic? Yeah, so there's lots of questions around that. But in terms of the interpretation from the lab, then, I always, like to advise that, particularly if the semen analysis isn't great, that they repeat it. But, otherwise I'd be happy with that result.
Right. Anything to add, Mary Lynn or Donald?
No, nothing extra to add there, thank you.
No, there's nothing I can add. That's good.
And Cassandra mentions, when does the clinic suggest a repeat? At this stage, no one suggested anything other than they keep trying. So it might be I can actually personally request repeats if I really want to. I've got a lab form, so I can do that. That would certainly be worth suggesting to them. The other thing is she's thinking about going privately for a, give me the technical word, the dye test one for the fallopian tubes.
Yes, I can go, Graham. Cassandra, in answer to your question, if the semen analysis isn't good, then I don't think they would, but potentially you could ask someone to go on something like vitamins or Menavit, or even just improve health and lifestyle and then retest. I mean, the consensus really is 3 months, isn't it? Would you agree? Yeah.
Brilliant. So, interestingly, a rather anxious couple and a rather high-tension appointment turned into a private email to me a day or so later, and it revealed in it that she'd prefer it wasn't discussed with him because he wouldn't be happy, she told me, but he actually had a massive history and a recent history of very high drug intake and a wide variety of drugs as well. So as it turned out, there was definitely some questions over sperm quality and lifestyle, and also some questions over stress levels and things going into conception. So there was lots going on for them, to say the least. And I thought it was a good point. This is a study I found that I actually use at some of my education sessions with community groups, just when we're talking about sperm. I think it's nice to have something of interest for people to look at. And it's a study that was done on French men, which they do believe apparently is a good indication of men across the world in developed countries. And it's quite a big sample that they used. Well, I would have said that was a big sample. Would you agree, Robin? 26,609 is a pretty big sample?
I would say that's a pretty big sample, yeah.
Sample. So they looked over a 17-year period and they worked out the average concentration. Let me have a look. What is that? The average amount of sperm in a sample. So the first time they did the test was in 1989, year after I was conceived, I'd like to point out. It's not that long ago. And the second time they redid the sample population was in 2005. And they found that for a 35-year-old man, which is not necessarily like at the spring chicken end of things either, they found that the average of number of sperm had dropped from 73.6 million per mil in 89 down to 49.9 million per mil in 2005, which is a significant drop across the population, isn't it?
Yes.
And just for a bit of shock and entertainment value, I like to suggest that if you drew a trend line, that would mean potentially, you never know, it could reach zero if that trend line continued in 2040. I don't think it necessarily will, but there you go.
I'm not going to comment on that one, Lena.
But I think it's a really good example for people on the fact that sperm quality is changing a little bit, and I think it draws people's attention. And sometimes when you have preconception advice, there's a lot of information for the women, and sometimes there's a lot of pressure, as we always discuss, on the females with the charting and the cycle and things like that. But I think it's quite relevant that, you know, there's a lot going on with fertility in men as well, so it just sort of draws attention back to it being a joint venture trying to create a baby. Anyone else have anything to add? Cassandra's gone quiet.
No?
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
What is motility?
Mobility.
It's supposed to be mobility, is it?
No, that's what it means. Moving.
And mobility. Is it
Oh,
moving and is it moving in the correct direction? You know, so they can move, but they can go round and round in circles, which isn't much good to you. So there's lots of things that they look at on a semen analysis, not just you know, how many there are if they're moving. So yeah.
Okay.
They make sure they got.
Can it move under its own steam?
Sorry, what was it, Donald? I cut you off.
it can move under its own steam in a purposeful way.
Yep.
Yeah, and is it, morphologically correct as well? So, yeah, that
Right.
sort of thing.
Does anyone else have anything to add to the preconception theme tonight? Any other thoughts that people have been thinking about?
Well, Lynn, I'd be quite interested to know the source of this trial. Where did you read about this?
Don't ask me that today when I don't have access to my slide, Donald. It was a legitimate source, I'll say. It was from something like a gynecological journal or something like that. It was done by a French university, I think, off the top of my head.
The reason why I ask is it's of general interest, and it's something that I think everybody would be interested in if that was brought to their attention.
Yeah,
I remember that it was
Sorry.
in the press. It was all over Facebook. It was a couple of years ago this was published, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a few years ago.
Yeah, or maybe that's the one Cassandra's talking about. She's saying she's read a similar article, and we should reference it. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sorry, Cassandra. I do apologise. I chopped it very quickly off my slideshow, but I have a tiny little citation-y thing link at the bottom. Yeah, no worries. So that when I'm doing it in front of these people in the room that are, health professionals and things, they do like to get reference. I do have a little reference summary for it. So if I can find the reference, which I should be able to when I look at my other slide, I'll pop it onto the research library on the website so anyone can download it and have a read of the full article.
That's a great idea, Lena. I mean, just the only other thing I would say is that just to remember our training that we need a lot of resources available as well. That, if somebody does come in and it's not our job to be a couples counsellor, and it's not, but just like if a woman says to you that she's had history with, I don't know, say a termination or whatever, then it is our sort of job just to sort of actually respect that they've said that and acknowledge it. And if they do need further support, it's not for us to provide, but it is for us to be able to provide a resource and that they can take away even if they don't care to talk about it anymore. And the same sort of goes with drug use and all that kind of thing, that we just need to be well-resourced for our clients.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic opportunity, like with the couple I was talking about before, to make sure that they know that they have those, I have a counsellor and things like that available, a card for them and things like that. Yeah, without judgment. Yeah. They're on display and that sort of thing, and if it becomes appropriate in the conversation, it's certainly nice to be able to make sure that they are aware of those things.
Yeah, and as Cassandra said here, without judgment, which is so important.
That's always the difficult part, to introduce options for things like that. In that way. So I grabbed a chart for us to look at and have a discussion about. Does everyone let me know when it's on your screen and you've had a wee chance to look at it?
I can see it. Thank you.
Cool. This was a couple that were trying to conceive. And for reference, the code at the top was small, medium, or lots in the amount column, and the colour was white or clear, and the texture was creamy, white, tacky, or stringy. No, sorry, sticky. And the N in the cervix column meant they couldn't reach it, and in fact this client couldn't reach the cervix at all, so she didn't attempt to do it again after the cycle. I want to start the ball rolling on a bit of a chart interpretation for them, or any more thoughts or questions about the chart?
Well, they haven't marked any intercourse anywhere.
No, they haven't.
Would it be nice to have some temperatures in the follicular phase, even though she has her period, just to get an idea of pre-ovulation?
Yeah, this was their first chart, and I think I saw them on day 6 or 7. So she backdid her days of period based on her diary, but that's why we got those chopped off. I thought that was quite realistic because that happens quite often, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense.
And Cassandra has suggested put down the date of first appointment on the chart. That's a good point.
That's a good plan.
Anyone, I'll get a pen, want to identify some peak days of mucus? Cassandra's not helping us. Rightio then. Oh, that's cute. Yeah, thanks, Cassandra. So, it's a while since I've looked at this chart, so do excuse me, let me re-navigate myself. So, okay, I'll start off with, if I do the mucus, someone has to come in and do ovulation. So, looking at her mucus picture, I can see automatically that she had the most amount on day 15, and she also had some clear mucus on day 15, and I think that's an STR. I think that's stretchy. Creamy. I think, looking at this chart, I would put the most fertile mucus on day 15, and stretchy. Yeah, I think that's what the STR. I think the STR does mean stretchy. I think that is STR. But there's also a medium amount on day 14, although it is white and tacky, and a medium amount white creamy. I did ask her about this creamy and tacky, and I think, this is going off the top of my head now, I'm pretty sure the tacky, believe it or not, was slightly thinner than her creamy was a little bit thicker. So I would probably have done day 14 and 15 as her most, as having the most mucus and the most fertile mucus, but mainly day 15. Anyone have any thoughts on that? Very silent.
Yep, I think that looks
Sorry.
good.
Okay.
What was the C? What was the letter C on day 16?
Creamy.
Creamy. Okay, yeah. And the day before was
Stretchy.
or stringy. Okay, yep. Day 15 looks as if it would be the last day of fertility there.
I don't know, there doesn't seem to be with this particular lady any really clear change between her fertile to infertile mucus, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
She definitely has a day where there's more, but it doesn't go back to sort of thick and tacky or something really, a really obvious change. Do you have any thoughts, Robin?
Yeah, I mean, looking at, I'm finding it really difficult to remember or what everything stands for, so it's difficult to sort of interpret someone's chart when I haven't sort of, but from what you said, I would say definitely her last day of fertility was cycle day 15. The reason for that is because she's gone from damp to, in terms of sensation, she's gone from damp to wet, and I appreciate she had a dry day on 13, damp again on 14, and wet on 15, but you obviously have to look at both the sensation and the actual colour amount and texture. And if you look up, she's gone small, medium lots, and then a definite change to something less fertile. She's gone from white to clear, which is definitely more fertile, and then moved to white. And she's gone from stretch. She's gone up to. Is that? Oh, actually, is that C clear?
On day 16.
Yeah.
On day.
I mean, it's hard to say because I'd need to talk to her about it, but it looks to me like day 15 is the last day of fertility, and then if you were counting, you'd count 1, 2, 3. But obviously, she's a TTC. Did you say she's trying to conceive?
Yep.
Oh, C's creamy. So yeah, definitely. Then 15 is the last day of fertility, because of course, as I say, you have to look at the sensation and at the mucus itself.
And if you go back to day 11, was where wetness starts. So there's not just the group of 2, there's basically, you know, a beginning of change there on day 11, even though you have 2 days of wet and a day of dry, and a day of dry and another of wet. You need to sort of look at the whole group as being, you know, the fertile patch.
Technically, if sperm went in on day 12 and then you had a dry day on 13, they would be unlikely to survive, wouldn't they, to day 14 or 15?
Why?
Well,
Why, if there's wetness?
I guess there could still be mucus up in the cervix for them to hang out in, I guess.
For sure there'd be mucus at the cervix, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Sandra agrees with
And you
that.
can tell that there was mucus at the cervix because look at the day after, it's wet again, so there must have been.
Right, so even though you have the dry sensation at the vagina, doesn't mean there's not mucus happening in the cervix.
And that's exactly why we have to always look at sensation and the mucus, because otherwise you could find yourself in all sorts of problems like that, which is why you've always got that backup.
Mm.
The other
There could
factor,
be other reasons for why people die that day.
there's another factor there too, is that they haven't written where they've had intercourse, and if they had intercourse, they could have been wet the following day. Okay.
That's very true.
If this is their first lot of charting, they might not have had the experience to differentiate between semen and mucus and the wetness that goes with it.
So in terms of the temperature chart, they had adjusted it down the side because she did have quite low temperatures in the chart. I would have put ovulation confirmed on day 18, where I've got my highlighter hovered over. 4, 3, 2, 1. Because
I don't understand that. Why would you say that?
because
Why as well? Why wouldn't you say day 15?
I don't think there's 6 lower temperatures at day 15.
There's not, but then again, you haven't got a complete chart, and I'd want to know as well what that day 11 meant, especially when she's got that, oh no, the N for her cervix, it's not comments, is it? But I'd want to ask her if anything had happened around that day, you know, whether that might have been a spike, because otherwise you could actually, I just find it really difficult to read it when you haven't got that first week. I understand why it's not there, but because you need to get a better indicator of where her temperatures are actually sitting pre-ovulation.
So what day did you say was a possibility if there was more history with the follicular phase?
Well, potentially she could have actually had her temperature rise on day, say, 15.
Oh, yep.
Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I see what you're doing though. In terms of if this client was a contraceptive client, I think where you've put it would be the safest option because you'd be working by the guidelines exactly, and there are 6 lower previous, you know, to the 3 higher. In which case, yeah, I'd go with that. But I think potentially with this client, actually, it doesn't matter on this chart, but it would be nice to see further charts and that potentially actually her ovulation could have happened between day 14 and 15.
And Cassandra has asked when did her period arrive. Day 30 was the her cycle was 29 days long. She did transfer after day 29 onto her next chart. Oh, screen.
Sorry, Lena, when did her period arrive?
On the
Day 30.
Yeah, well, day 30, well, on the 17th of that month, so her cycle was 29 days long. Well, the luteal length's interesting because as Robin points out, you're missing some cycle history. But
that would be a 15-day luteal cycle.
If ovulation has definitely happened by day 18, and you worked from there, then that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, days long if she'd ovulated on day 18, and as Robin's saying, she could have ovulated potentially even a little bit earlier than that. So wouldn't that pretty much mean that she was highly likely to have had a sufficient luteal length?
12 days it would have been, did you say?
11? I say 11 or 12? Sandra's in agreement with
Day 18, did you say, the temperature rise one? Two.
Yeah, I said if it happened on, if ovulation was confirmed on day 18 at the latest, even taking into account your suggestion it could have been earlier.
It's still a 12-day luteal phase, which is adequate.
That's a very good first chart. You know,
You mean in terms of being well charted?
of charting every day.
Oh, she was very good at that. She's a detailed person, as you can tell by all the information and the description of mucus. She took a lot of notes. She's a perfect client. Sandra's noted it's an interesting triphasic chart. So you're talking about it 3 jumps.
She was pregnant, actually.
No, she's not pregnant.
Quite looks like it though.
I think her temperature started very low. That was the lowest she had temperatures. She's done about 3 or 4 cycles since. Oh, hang on. Well, let's go back to September, October. She's done a few more cycles since then. And this is a little
I think my interpretation of this chart would be exactly as Mary Lynn said, to praise them that how wonderful they've done, and actually we need another one to get a better picture, but it's already giving you an idea that she does ovulate and that things seem to be fairly much in sync.
That's a nice way to, that's a good thing to say. I like that idea.
Yeah, well,
So Sandra said, who is to say that she didn't have an early pregnancy loss? That's a good point. Anyone? So maybe. So that's pretty much, oh goodness, the conclusion idea to that chart is we've identified her peak days of mucus, and we've identified that it appears she definitely has ovulated in that cycle, so that's really positive. But we can't absolutely conclude when ovulation happened because we're missing that follicular information. Is that pretty much in agreement with that?
Yeah, and as Cassandra's written, that she would question about how the next period was, and was it any different to previous periods, just in lieu of it, you know, being triphasic and staying quite so high like that. But yeah, it's a kind of watch this space one, isn't it? It shows some really positive things, no matter where ovulation was. She had a good enough luteal phase. She was ovulatory. Yeah. Have you got the next chart, Lena?
No, I don't have it on me. I'm sorry. I haven't prepared that one. Might have to look at it next time. But yeah, and the other thing was to ask them to write, I think she had record of when they'd had intercourse, but I think I did tell her, remind her at this point that it would be great to have that on the chart for the next cycle as well.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that chart before we conclude the charting section? Any other thoughts, Cassandra? No, nothing from Cassandra. Anyone else have anything to add lastly to that chart interpretation?
No.
No. Oh, I look forward to seeing someone's difficult chart next time. It wasn't so much difficult, but I dug it out, although it was a little bit challenging in that, yeah, missing that follicular information does complicate things a little bit, doesn't it? It makes it far more exciting when you've got a complete chart. Cool bananas. Well, that draws us to the end of our conversation for today.
Okay.
So thank you everyone that's been here live, and thank you to everyone that's listening the next day. If you have any questions, make sure you send them in to myself so that I can present them at the next meeting. And if you had a look at the chart and you have some charts that you want to discuss, then make sure you pop those through as well, and we'll be able to discuss them at the next meeting. Thank you everyone for coming, and have a good rest of your evening.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Lena.
See you later.
Thanks, Lena. That's great.
Thank you. Catch you later, everyone.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.